What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, Karens, and all that kind of stuff. Hope you're all doing awesome today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and as usual, we're getting right into today's stories. Worst noise complaint I've ever had. I worked security at a Section 8 apartment complex, and we usually ended up being called for all noise complaints. 99% of the time it was loud music, party, whatever. Ask them to turn it down, no problem. Nothing came of it. Except this one guy. Okay, let's set the stage a bit. 6 8-story apartment buildings, 24 to 36 apartments in each of the 2 wings of the buildings. Cinder block construction, steel doors and frames, that the police gave up trying to bust down because after 15 minutes of kicking one, it hadn't moved an inch. Fire department opened one with the jaws of life once. Good day. We get a noise complaint about 11:30 at night or so. Before we even get into the building, we can hear the music. We get into the elevator to go to the top floor. By the 3rd floor up, the elevator walls were vibrating. When we got out on the 8th floor, it was so loud we had to yell at the residents to be heard. Neighbors are pissed, like this guy's gonna get murdered pissed. Banging like hell on this clown's door, 0 response. We call the PD. We literally held up the phone to the door to give dispatch an idea of how loud this was. The PD shows up and are pounding on the door. No response. We get maintenance to open the apartment door, because at this point we are legitimately concerned this guy was dead or unconscious. Nope, he was fine, and he said he always played his TV, music, whatever at maximum volume, because according to him, his apartment was soundproofed, and he needed it that high to be able to sleep. What the hell? And the leasing office said it was okay. Neighbors are all screaming at him, PD is getting more and more pissed, and his music is still blasting. Oh, and he had just moved in the day before. Facepalm. Wonder why he got booted out of his old place. PD tells him, turn it off. Not down, off. Or you get a $600 noise complaint and have to show up in court. Guy finally stopped arguing and turned it off. PD leaves. Neighbors finally decided to disperse, thinking it is all over. Nope. 15 minutes after the PD leaves, guess who turned his music back on? Surprise, it's douchebag. We call the PD again, go back over, and half the damn top floor is outside his door hammering at it and screaming their heads off. We call maintenance for the key again before the PD even shows up. He goes through the entire song and dance again. He got the okay from the leasing office, his apartment is soundproofed, etc. PD ends up arresting him on a public nuisance or whatever they can cook up, because it was sure looking like a lynch mob was forming. The very next night, you will never guess who was blaring his music again. This time I had talked to the leasing office, and no, they had never told him his apartment was soundproofed, and no, if he played it as loud as everyone was complaining said he was in violation of his lease, and they would boot his ass before he got shanked in the stairwell. PD gets called again, gave him another $600 ticket, and told him he is going back to jail again if they have to come back. Guy swears all up and down he'll be good, honest. PD leaves. We wait out by the elevators. Literally 10 minutes later, the music starts blasting, and the neighbors are all coming out. We said screw it, went into the maintenance room and tripped the circuit breaker for his apartment, shutting off his power. Blessed silence. We let maintenance know why and to not turn it back on until the next morning. We had to do that for an entire week. The leasing agent and I also had a talk with him in the office because he came in to complain that his power kept going out. Well, that was because his stereo was just drawing too much power and kept tripping the breaker. Too bad, so sad. Sucks to be you. One more complaint and he was out. They would boot him for violating his lease. If the other residents didn't catch him and beat his ass like a halftime drum first, that is. I got my coworker fired on April Fool's Day. To preface, I work at a firm in the southern states, in a pretty small office of about 20 people, and we're pretty unorthodox. Trivia, play mini-golf inside and can watch videos while working, etc. I, 25 female, have been here a year, and Phil has been here 6 years. Our office began expanding with new hires that include a few minorities, including me, and a few other Hispanic people whose primary language is Spanish. Phil is a very religious old white man, about 58 with very traditional values and likes things to be his way. Recently, since all the new hires started, he's been very rude to some of the new hires that work here, especially the Hispanic people. He said stuff like, quote, "Well, you can just go back to Mexico," when in disagreement, and, quote, "Black people don't need a national anthem. If you think otherwise, then you're racist." I am pretty nice to Phil when he speaks to me. I'm pretty sure he's very alone in this world. I think his mental health was starting to take a toll, and I have a grandpa with dementia, who's not an asshole, just to clarify. So I gave the guy grace, and so did the HR department in our small office. We consider him a very useful asset to the company, so our boss just told him not to talk to anybody unless it's strictly regarding work, because I guess his comments were, quote, small talk. Fast forward to the week before April Fool's Day, and I planned to pull a prank on a coworker. I bought a little multi-frame and was going to place pictures of this other coworker sleeping at his desk and was going to display it on my desk for all to see. We're friends, by the way. I did all that the night before, and lo and behold, the next morning, my frame had "Jesus is risen" and "Happy Easter" in it. Phil's doing. I'm religious too, but that was my effing property on my effing desk. So after some thought, I wanted to pull a small, petty prank on Phil. So I placed a small piece of paper between the battery and the connection in his mouse that night. This man had little evidence bags written with red marker of the mouse, the battery, and the paper on our boss's desk the next morning. He was specifically accusing one of my Hispanic coworkers because they've argued in the past. Phil was saying you're a f***ing lying piece of shit to him, then telling our boss he's a f***ing liar. This is all I heard through closed doors and over some cubicles, so I might have missed some words, but I know a cuss word when I hear one. So I went to the boss's office and told him I pulled the prank, and what happened the day before with the frame. He said it's okay, just don't mess with Phil again. Later that day, Phil was still pissed that our boss wasn't confronting who he thought pulled the prank, and even some accomplices, none of which included me. Phil and my boss were screaming, arguing, and it was Phil's last day as he was fired. April Fools? And Phil has given gun threats post his firing, and we had to lock our doors to any without a key for a few months. Wow, I'm just now starting to realize the damage I caused. Talk about a butterfly effect. Mother-in-law sneaking in our house and is now trying to get her house back. My wife goes back and forth between wanting to satisfy her mother's every whim and not wanting to have anything to do with her. It's complicated. My relationship with my mother-in-law has always been awkward. She didn't want her precious daughter to leave home and start her own family, so she always tried to shackle my wife as near to her as possible and use every possible trick up her sleeve to achieve exactly that. From fake illness to last-second vacation announcements we had to go on with her. So around 6 months ago, my wife's parents bought a new house, a smaller one since they didn't need all the space at their old home. Eventually, my mother-in-law somehow convinced my wife to convince me to buy the house from them, so we can buy cheap and live with one less worry. At first, I personally wasn't interested in that house. I was completely against purchasing it. The amount they asked for, $450K, was not worth the state the house was in. Long story short, my wife got extremely upset with me for not wanting the house, and I just gave in and said yes. So yay, we own a house now. To be clear, I bought the house cash, no mortgage, everything is on paper. Nothing is in their name anymore, it's all on us now. For the past few months after moving in, we've been renovating a bit here and there and all seemed well. The house was fine after some work, although there is still a lot to fix. But I noticed a few things. Whenever we're gone for more than 8 hours or a few days and then returning to the house, it seems like someone was inside. I could have sworn some of my stuff was moved. A few times it smelled like gas, as if I left something on in the kitchen, and the sink in one of the bathrooms was wet. Even my wife found it odd, and after the gas incident she was alarmed. So I figured mother-in-law probably still has a key in her possession that we don't know of, and she snoops around. I bought 2 cheap cameras and installed them so I could see the entrance and the living room as those two are connected. I didn't just change the locks, but had completely new secure doors installed. 2 days after this, I got a text from my mother-in-law saying that I'm an evil person trying to destroy everything she loves, and that she wants the house back from us, as she isn't happy with how we are treating her old property. I asked her where this came from all of a sudden, and her answer was, You're destroying our old home. That door was a precious memento and you shouldn't have changed it out without asking me first. I told her that the house was no longer hers and we could do whatever we wanted. I didn't hear back from her until now. She now says she wants her house back because we're apparently not fit to be homeowners. She says she is going to give us back $430K of the $450, as they already spent $20K since moving out and want everything back. I told her to pound sand and that the home is now ours. I already had the police at my door after she called them. Can you imagine what it looked like for me to explain to them that this house was legally mine? They laughed. And the worst part, my wife says to just reinstall the old door. I don't understand my mother-in-law, that I'm okay with, but I also don't understand how my wife can be on her side about this. If it were me, I would go no contact and leave it at that, but my wife is just glued to her. This marriage doesn't feel like her and me, it feels like her, me, and her crazy mother. Father-in-law is alright, just a normal person. Most of the time fed up with mother-in-law's BS too, but he can't be bothered to actually hold her back. Lady demanded my ID for sitting on my porch. I live in a beach town and my apartment is in a pretty nice location, and most of the neighboring houses are short-term rentals. Today I went out for hours and ended up back on my porch to chill for a while before going back inside. During me sitting minding my own business, I hear, hey, sir. Sir. I realize it's directed at me. Are you supposed to be sitting there? She said while pointing at my porch. Yeah, I live here, I said. Yeah, okay, let me see your license. I pull out my keys, hit the lock button, making my car beep, and stare right at her. That doesn't mean anything. Do you want me to call the police? She said. You'll be gone Monday by 11 a.m. anyway, I told her. She realizes I know exactly when the people have to leave, because I've been living here for over a year, and she puts that defeated, sad face on while I open my door and go inside. Anyway guys, that's going to be all for today. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel as well for more Reddit shenanigans. So take care and I'll see you next time.